Well, welcome back again this week. This week we're on the third leg of a four-part series that Fox News had commentary on a few weeks ago that I felt they were not taking the right slant to get a full picture of what's going on in these four areas. The first one that we talked about was the reduction of the Army, the cutback of the Army to pre-World War II days, and they felt that was wrong. Our viewpoint is that if our State Department and the international businessmen and that sort of thing would stop helping building up the enemies of the United States, we wouldn't need a standing army. We would have the constitutional army of state militias. There's a lot of advantages to state militias. One of these days I will have just a segment on that, I believe, because a lot of people have never thought this through. Yes, we'd need an Air Force, we'd need R&D, that sort of thing, but we wouldn't need a standing army if we weren't creating our own enemies. The State Department of the United States is not an American institution because of the individuals who are in it, involved with it, and working overseas. Very rarely do we ever have a head of state, or the armed forces for that matter, that's not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a globalist organization, an organization that stands for a new world order, in other words, a world government under socialism, at least state-controlled economy, which is, in a word, socialism. So if we didn't have those people in there, we wouldn't need an army because of the problems they create and actually building up our enemy. It's far more extensive, by the way, than you think it is. This buildup of our enemy and the collusion between businessmen like Boeing and Lockheed and General Motors and others working with these communist states in co-production, co-R&D, and that sort of thing. Don't forget, it was Joseph McCarthy that got into a lot of trouble trying to get the communists out of the State Department. He had nothing to do with Hollywood. All that, they blame him for Hollywood, the Hollywood 10 and all that. He had nothing to do with that. What he was trying to do was to get the communists out of the State Department. He was not successful. Also, space exploration. We talked about that. Space exploration is essentially a socialist program. And that's been part of the socialist program in the United States since at least the 1830s. You can document it further back, where they said that we want invention and exploration and everything else to come out of the federal government rather than the individual, rather than private enterprise. And so space exploration, we have a real serious problem with that. On the other hand, space defense, the use of space to protect the citizens of the United States, that's something else again. And so Fox was bearing down on the idea of a manned space program. That's not really the issue. The issue is the space program going to be used to defend the citizens of the United States, or are we going to be sending our men up on Russian rockets to cavort with Russians and Chinese on the manned space station? And oh, by the way, we might visit Mars and go further than that. And no, we just this last week found that there was a Earth-like planet 500 light years away. That's interesting. If you can travel at light speed in 500 years, you can get there. I just don't think we're going to be able to do that. It doesn't work unless several generations are going to be born and exist on a huge, massive space vehicle to go to this other planet for what purpose? It makes no sense except wasting a lot of money. Now, the thing that we're going to talk about today is the global strategic advantage of using our own energy resources. For those of you who recall, several months ago, I read something from Nelson Rockefeller in his confirmation hearings, and I'm going to reread it for you because this is what he said in 1974 when he was up as vice president. He was nominated as vice president of the United States by Gerald Ford after Nixon had resigned, and this is part of his confirmation hearings. He said, "The oil in the shale in the Colorado area is equivalent to twice the known reserves of all the Mediterranean Arab countries. So we have tremendous supplies. Now keep in mind, this is a Rockefeller. They do know a little bit about oil. The oil and the clay in the south, in the Tennessee area, represents an almost equal amount of oil in the entire known Arab reserves. So in two instances, he says we have more than what they've got in all of these areas that we depend on, right here in the continental 48 states, not counting offshore, not counting Alaska, the North Slope, and all of that. So I say to you, sir, in my opinion, we can reconcile these differences, and by 1985, we can meet our own needs from our own sources, protect and improve our environment, and do it within the framework of prices which now exist, which is about 45 cents a gallon. Not bad. Did it happen? No. Is it the Democrats' problem? Well, I don't think so any more than it's the Republican problem. We're talking about a Republican administration here. We've had a few Republican administrations since 1974. Reagan. We had Bush and then Bush 2. Did any of these things get solved under them? No. They hamstrung the oil companies just like the Democrats did. And it was, if you recall, Nixon who formed by edict, by executive order, the Environmental Protection Agency, which was rubber stamped by the Congress. And it has been a problem for us ever since in the way of oil exploration, oil extraction. Now, to fit global strategic needs, all we need to do is just depend on ourselves. You see, we have all the resources, pretty much all the resources, except for rare earth substances, to take care of our own industry, to take care of our own people, take care of our own military. We don't need to get in bed and form foreign entanglements, connected sometimes with oil and that sort of business, in the way that others think that we should, like Fox or anybody else. One of these days, people are going to notice the kind of commentary and commentators that Fox has that belong to the Council on Foreign Relations are agnostics by their own admission and that sort of thing. A lot of good things come out of Fox, but strategically, globally, in these debates, such as what we're addressing here, they miss the main points or skew them into their globalist agenda, because believe me, Fox does have a globalist agenda. It is neocon, which is globalist. It sounds conservative as to fiscal policy, but internationally it is and always will be globalist. We have to understand that when we hear these people and listen to them in their debates. They don't always talk about the things that you would disagree with. They only talk about the things you agree with and neglect certain things to get you to believe that this is the solution to a particular problem. The solution to most of our problems is lessening the size of government in the United States, getting it to be less globalist, and getting the communists out of our own government. They're still there. They've never been dismissed from government from the days of McCarthy. And start to really look at what does the communist goal say it is, and then compare that to the goal of the American government, and you will find that a lot of these policies come straight out of the Communist Manifesto. Just closing on this one thing. I used to go into schools and I would take the 10 steps that Karl Marx outlined to communize a country. Then I would ask the students to tell me how far we are along the road towards these 10 steps inside the United States. There was not a class, and by the way, I always took the lowest answer of percentage-wise. In other words, how far are we towards a graduated income tax in this country? Obviously, it's 100%, which is step number 2 of the Communist Manifesto. How are we on another step, like a central bank? Well, that's 100%. But other steps were not 100%. And I always took the lowest percentage of that, added it all up, divided it by 10 to give an overall picture I never had a class come less than 55% towards communism right out of the Communist Manifesto. Now, if I'd taken the highest percentages that the students gave, it would have been 85%. People do not understand what communism really is. And they need to look at what the steps are in the Communist Manifesto and decide for themselves, relative to their own politicians, their local government, their state government, the federal government, their representatives, and where they stand in supporting these things, to find out whether you should be voting for them or not. Because a lot of people don't realize what's really in the Communist Manifesto. And they use these debates to channel us towards the adoption of these measures inside the United States that will forever radically alter our society and ultimately our government. There are too many things going on right now behind the scenes to change our system of government, which is another subject we'll take up in the future. At any rate, I would urge all of you to read the Communist Manifesto. Read between the lines. See how what they want to do is change society as a whole, using all sorts of things, whether it's oil, whether it's the army, whatever it is, to where they will have a communist revolution from the bottom up because the people demand it and they get used to it, because what they believe is what they see and learn in the school, on television, and everything else. Don't think for a minute that they're going to leave a television station that is supposedly in opposition free from their influence. It's not going to happen. Until next week, we'll see you then.